All right, you ready? We are talking Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 2. This is the best community on YouTube. Now let's get it. All right, man, listen, I am so excited to get into this with you. Welcome, by the way, if you are new here. Make sure you stick around and hit that subscribe button because this is the best community on YouTube. And if you love action, sci-fi, or fantasy, then you are in the right place because it's all we cover here. So let's get into it now. I want to start by asking you guys a question because the last time we had a conversation about God, people were a little bit salty because they felt like it wasn't enough action in that first episode. And I get where you're coming from. It's been, what, 2 years with nothing? And then we get an episode like that and you're like, man, no dragons, nobody getting ran through, no heads lopped off, no ice people or night king people. That's what I call them. I call them ice people. So no, we didn't have any of that. We had pretty much a really story driven show, and now we have episode 2 and you have even less action than you had in the first episode. So my question to you is, did you think this was a boring episode? Did you think it sucked? And if you did, I want to give you some things to think about because this episode was hugely important. I noticed a lot of things, got some theories as a matter of fact, and I want to see what you think about it. Now, the first thing we have to talk about, guys, think about this. If you're kind of thinking about this episode in a little bit of a different way, let me kind of try and turn your thinking, because there's a lot of important things that happen in this episode in the way of resolution and in the way of connection. I feel like now everybody really is kind of starting to see the gravity of the situation, whereas in episode 1, they're still kind of fighting, there's still beefing going on between the North and outsiders, and we still see a little bit of an element of that, but now people are like, man, like it's on. Like any minute now, we're about to go to war, and you kind of see the gelling of all of these different folks, of all of these different houses, if you will, that were kind of at each other's throat. Now they're in a place where everybody has to work together. So I love what this episode does in terms of giving us that cohesion, but also bringing like big time resolution to a lot of the different players in this episode. So let's talk about one of them that I really like. Let's talk about Tyrion, because I know I said the last episode that Tyrion's probably smarter than what he presents, and for the folks that saying, oh man, the dude's like fell off, he's like losing his sharpness, his edge. Well, it turns out he is losing his edge, and he probably believes Cersei when he should not have. But I think what's really hurting him at this point is that I think he really respects Dany, and I think it's really important for him to be seen as someone that's in Dany's good graces, someone that Dany can trust. But there's a certain point in this episode where he doesn't feel like that, where he feels like he's on the outs, and he knows it. He's like, listen, what can I say? I was wrong about a lot of things. But I think that she really gives him redemption, and he needs that redemption when they're trying to decide who's going to fight where. And he's like, listen, give me a sword, I want to go out there, I want to get down with the rest of the folks. And Dany's like, no, you're going to the crypt, which is probably a stupid place to be, but I'll talk about that in a second. You're going to the crypt because I need your mind. That is what's the sharp part about you. That's what's most important about you. And I feel like for him, that is a moment of redemption, because he now recognizes that Dany still sees him as somebody valuable. Listen, we got a lot of moments like that in this show, and that's why this episode is so good. I know it was not action-packed, but it was so story-driven with a lot of pivotal moments, I feel like, that are important. And some things are happening behind the scenes that you might not realize. They're tugging on your heartstrings, but you might not see it. And I'm going to explain how that is the case when we get a little further along. So we have that whole redemption, right, with Dany and Tyrion, but also think about the redemption that happens with Jaime and Bran. I thought that was super powerful, man, because you know that when Bran said the things we do for love, that Jaime probably almost soiled himself. The man probably almost BM'd himself, but he didn't give him up. So when they meet in the garden and they're talking, and Jaime asks, why didn't you tell them? And Bran says, listen, I'm not mad at you. You did what you did for your family. I thought that was tremendous, because at this point Jaime is a changed person, or he appears to be a changed person, and I know that that had to be heavy on him, and to have Bran say that to him had to be like a weight lifted. And I feel like all these things are important. Listen, you're on the eve of the likelihood of your death. So it's nice to have all of these things that have been weighing on you off your chest. So we have a lot of moments like that. We have the moment with Lady Brianna and Jaime when he knights her. That's a tremendous asset for her, because you know that she's always wanted to be a knight, even though she pretends that she didn't. But she's always fought for position. She's always fought to be a respected warrior. And the epitome of something like that was knighthood, but she could never get it right because she was a female. So she just had resolved in herself that it's not going to happen because it doesn't happen to females. So to have him, of all people, because you know she's got the googly eyes for him, she's digging the brother, be the one to knight her was just kind of like her dream come true. And I feel like it was that much more exciting for her because of how she feels about him. So I think that's fascinating as well, as she really is beginning to kind of like, explore these feelings of love, which really she's tucked away, because in her heart of hearts, she's been a warrior all of her life. And she's had to really, that much more so than the dudes, position herself to kind of be hard at heart, to be the type of warrior that gets the respect that she deserves. So to see that happen with him, I feel like really kind of melts her heart. And then we start to see her feel like kind of the resolution, the justification that she is in fact knighthood worthy, or knighthood worthy. I don't know. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. You guys know how that works. So we have all of these moments, man, like all of these pivotal moments that I think are so important. We have like that little conversation between Arya and the Hound, and we find out a little bit more about her list. So this episode is really important because we see the changes that people have made up to this point. We kind of see all of these different storylines blended, and how all of these folks are dealing with what is probably going to be the death of a good many of them if it goes down like I think it's going to go down. So this episode is important because it really does bring us into an emotional state of mind and really help to connect us with a lot of the characters. And I believe that is a surefire setup to tug on our emotions, because some people aren't walking away from this ordeal. Now, check this out. Here's my theory. So, we know now that Jon knows that he really is the rightful heir to the throne. He is the one that should be sitting on the Iron Throne. But we also know that Dany all her life has had the goal of returning the throne, because she feels like the throne is justifiably hers, especially considering the way that the king went out that was the king of the throne. Oh, got a pain in my side. Sorry, crunching down to get that out. But now we know that Jon is the rightful heir. But at this point in the show, Jon has not told her yet. Now later on, Jon is going to tell her. Here's what's interesting. Here's my theory. So we know that Dany goes in and has a conversation with Sansa because she's really kind of trying to mend that relationship. So they talk about the upcoming battle and things to come, and then they get to the point about the Iron Throne, and Dany's like, well, once we've defeated the Night King, then my next move is to take my seat on the throne. And Sansa's like, well, what about the North? Because listen, we swore we will never bow down to anyone that sits on that throne. We are not going to do it. You see Dany remove her hand. Now, here's my theory. We know that later on in that episode that Dany has a conversation with Jon, and Jon says who he is. Jon says that he's a Targaryen, and Dany's taken back by that because she knows that that means that he is the rightful heir to the throne. So a lot of questions that people have had is whether or not Dany will step aside if she realizes that Jon is actually the heir to the throne, and let him assume the title that he has and actually fall back to a support role. I think that she's going to do that. And what I think is interesting about that is when we think about the conversation that she had with Sansa before, it would be a perfect fit for him to do that, because not only would he assume the rightful heirship to the throne, which is it's his, it's not Dany's, it's his, but it would also satisfy the North as well, because Stark technically is from the North. If you want more Game of Thrones, make sure you click right here, and also make sure you visit us on Tuesday, because I'm going to tell you what upcoming shows will likely satisfy your Game of Thrones itch when the season is over. Also visit us on our Patreon. We would love your support, and make sure that you like, comment, subscribe. I will see you in the comments, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.